Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our program. Today, we're going to be talking about the Uyghur Muslims. Are you familiar with the Uyghur Muslims, the Muslim community of China? Have they become the forgotten people of the world? Are they the forgotten Muslims of the world, of China, more than anything else? China is not just a power, but it is most likely going to be one of the most powerful nations on earth. It is marching its way in domination, control of economy, resources, infrastructure, development in many countries in the developing world. And yet China has systematically, not just on one or two incidents, it's a systematic genocide of a people. When I say genocide, it's been equated to concentration camps run by the Nazis in Germany. It's been equated to brainwashing, systematic brainwashing of people, enforced education program where they're trying to make people communist and give up their faith. Women have been raped Muslim women have been raped in those camps. Muslim men have been tortured. People who have opposed or protested have found themselves in incarceration. Not in one or two in number, but millions of Muslims of Uyghur region, which is in the western parts of China. They have faced awful persecution at the hands of the Chinese government, the communist regime of China. Recently, United States of America has accused China of genocide. It's one of the last acts of Donald Trump. Whatever you say about Donald Trump, this is one of those acts that I think deserves a praise. It should have done it before, but he did it at last. Who are the Uyghur people? There are about 12 million Muslims who live in the northwestern China in the region of Xinjiang, officially known as Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The Uyghur speak their own language similar to Turkish and see themselves as culturally and ethnically close to Central Asian nations, less so to China. They make up less than half of the Xinjiang population. In the recent decades, there has been a mass migration of Han Chinese, that's China's ethnic majority, to Xinjiang. And the Uyghur feel their culture and livelihood are under threat. Stories of Han Chinese forcefully taking over Uyghur Muslim homes, raping Muslim women, is not unknown, is not uncommon. And there is continuous surveillance of these people. 24 hours a day, camera, monitoring everything that they're doing. Face recognition camera, any signs of any Muslimness within anybody would get them into trouble and they would get into a concentration camp. China calls it re-education program, and the international community has called it concentration camp. Let's talk to our guests today and let's find out from them as to what they think. I've been joined by four eminent guests. First one I have on my list is Barrister Michael Pollack, who is chair lawyer of Uyghur Rights. Michael, hi, how are you?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us. Very grateful. For some odd reason, your camera is slightly hazy. I can't see your face very clearly. It could be because of the lighting, maybe. I don't know. But whichever way, I'm grateful that you could make it. Thank you. I've also been joined by Nur Sinam Gul, Abdul Rashid, I think that's the name, member of Uyghur community. Nur Sinam Gul, Abdul Rashid, Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Have I got your name correct? Nur Sinam Gul.
My name is Nur Saman Gul Abdurrashid.
Okay. I'll do my best. I will call you Nur
Thank you.
Sinam
No
Gul.
problem. You can call Nur.
Nur, okay, very good. My daughter's name is Noura, so it's not very far away. And then I have also been joined by Aisha, a member of the Uyghur community, who is going to join us on the phone, does not want to show herself for security reasons. Aisha, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you for
And
joining.
thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us, even though we're hearing from you. Thank you again. And we've also been joined by Richard Flowers, Chair, Tower Hamlets Liberal Democrats. Richard, welcome to our program.
Salam alaikum, and thank you for your welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I was, when I saw Richard Flowers from Tower Hamlets Liberal Democrats, I was expecting a very different Richard. There was another Richard in Tower Hamlets a long time ago when I was active with the Lib Dems, but of course, that was almost 10 years, 12 years ago, but never mind. Welcome, Richard. Thank you very much for joining us. Truly grateful. Let's start with Noor Sinamgul, who is Uyghur herself, member of the community. Noor, what's going on? Am I making it up that 25 million Muslims in China, scattered across different parts, but a large number of them who live in the Uyghur region are now facing unspeakable conditions, including incarceration, concentration camp, forced labor, rape, and so on?
Yes, let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Nur Sumangul Abdureshit, and I was born in Kashgar, the most west part of China. It's actually the Uyghur community has a huge population in Kashgar city. I do my university in Shanghai, and after graduation in 2015, I came to Turkey to study for my master's degree. I graduated in 2018, and now I am working in Istanbul. I lost contact with my family members since 18th of June 2017. Not only me, all of the Uyghurs living abroad lost contact with their family members back home since 2017, and I am also one of them. After I lost contact, I keep searching and I keep hearing news about huge harassment. I keep hearing the testimonies online, and until 2018, I can't hear anything about my family members. And on February 2018, I got a simple message that there is no one in your home, and that means that my parents and my two brothers are arrested and they are lost in one of the concentration camps you saw on the media. And I keep writing to the human rights organizations. I keep asking the Chinese embassy in Turkey, and I do whatever I can do. And but until 2020, 15th of June, I didn't hear anything. But on 15th of June 2020, the Chinese embassy in Turkey, they call me and they just tell me that my father, I want to show the picture of my father, Abdureshit Tohti, 54 years old, a retired government worker. He was arrested in 2017 and sentenced 16 years, 11 months.
Why? Why was he sentenced?
I will tell after I introduce all of my family members who are arbitrarily arrested. And this is my mother, Tajgul Qadir. She is 51 years old and she is sentenced 13 years. And this is my elder brother, Ahmetcan Abdureshit. He is 34 years old. He is sentenced 7 years. And this is my younger brother, Muhammad Ali Abdureshit. He is 30 years old and he is sentenced 15 years, 11 months. And my two brothers are the businessmen, have a 3 auto spare parts shop in Kashgar. And according to the Chinese embassy in Turkey, all of my family members are arrested for nothing actually. And they said they don't have any evidence, but the government think my family members maybe have a thoughts, might have attended any terrorist activities. That's why they arrested all of them and sent them to the concentration camps and then transferred to the prison. And
on average, 1 second, Noor, on average, your family members have received 15 years, 16 years prison sentence. Collectively, they must have been sentenced to about 60 years, if I've calculated it correctly. And it's because Chinese government suspect them of attending terrorist activities. They haven't done any terrorist activities, have they?
No, they didn't do anything, and the government think they might have an intention.
So in the future, they may do this in the future. So the Chinese government is preventing this from happening in the future.
Yes.
How bizarre. I mean, this sounds ridiculous. Now stay there, Noor. I'll come back to you in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Noor. Noor also gave a speech in the Turkish parliament, apparently, which was broadcast in China, and immediately in China, the television stations were shut down because of that. But I'll come back to that to find out a bit more. Let me go to Michael Pollack, who is a barrister lawyer for the Uyghur rights. Michael, this sounds absolutely bizarre, ridiculous. It's like saying I might jump the traffic light in 10 years' time or 5 years' time. So therefore, British government would confiscate my driving license in case in the future I jump the traffic light. That's how it comes across to me.
Well, in regards to what's happened to the Uyghur people, we must remember that only a few years ago, this story wasn't in the news very much at all. And then some researchers around the world, including some very hardworking young people, started bringing out the evidence about these camps, these massive camps existing across the whole region. And China said, there's nothing to see here, nothing is happening. As more and more evidence came out, and some of the researchers, they found mass purchase of cattle prods and things like that, China suddenly switched their story to say, well, there are camps, but they're not concentration camps, they're re-education camps.
That's what the Chinese government says.
Exactly, they keep changing their story, and then more recently, some Uyghur activists said there's millions of Uyghurs in these camps, and China and some Western commentators said that's ridiculous, and then more recently they've accepted this. So the Chinese narrative of what's actually happening has changed so many times. It's very hard to believe anything they say. What we have, and my organization Justice Abroad, we have lots of Uyghur clients who've got family members abroad and they want to free their family members in China. Nurse Mangal and her sister got in contact with me, and we're helping their family with their case as well. And what we've seen is there's a bit of a pattern. The Chinese authorities, if members of a family are outside of China, that's a cause to arrest people. But it's not the only cause. There could be any cause. When you're arresting over 1 million people, it's pretty widespread. So
what are the reasons for arrests? I mean, so this one example of arbitrary arrest, but what is it? How can Chinese government get away with this by just arbitrarily, whimsically arresting people just like that?
Well, just firstly, the first point to that question is, it is arbitrary. We've heard lots of stories about the Chinese authorities forcing Uyghurs and also Uzbeks and Tajiks, other Muslim people in the area, to choose what offense they're guilty of. So there's not even a pretense that this is being done properly in a court of law. So it is totally arbitrary. The second part of your question is, how do they get away with it? And for a long time, people didn't really know about it. And then when people found out about it, there are still some countries and some governments who just won't speak up about it, which is really disappointing. And you spoke about Nurse Mangal's very brave speech in the Turkish parliament. She was invited there by some of the opposition parties to speak. It was actually Turkish parliamentary TV that cut her off. So Uyghur people, when they escape from the mass oppression in Xinjiang, even if they escape to countries which one might suspect of being friendly to Muslim people who are oppressed, such as Turkey, they still face big difficulties there. And there's been lots of cases and lots of stories about Uyghurs being sent back from Turkey through third countries back to the Xinjiang region. So how do they get away with it? Because lots of countries are focused on simply doing business with China. And that's the sad truth of it. Okay. You have the Organization of Islamic Conference as well, and you think this is the Muslim people being attacked, being massively oppressed. Where's their huge statements about it? And there's been very little. You have Pakistan. Why doesn't Pakistan say something? there's all these countries who could be speaking up about what's happening to the Uyghur Muslim people, but they're simply not doing it. And it's very embarrassing, I think, for those countries. And they will have to answer for it, because now the evidence which is coming out, it's all over British TV, the newspapers, shows exactly what's happened. This is mass rape, this is mass torture, it's mass arbitrary detention. So it really is a bit embarrassing, I think, for those states and those leaders who aren't speaking up for Uyghur people.
Thank you for clarifying that. It looks like things are getting worse. In December 2020, research seen by BBC showed up to 500,000 people were being forced to pick cotton. So there is forced labor. People who have managed to escape the camp have also reported physical, mental and sexual abuse, torture. Women have spoken of mass rape and sexual abuse. Early leaked documents known as China cables made clear the camps were intended to run as high security prison with strict discipline and punishment. In 2020, more than 380 such institutions called, or re-education camp as China would like to call it, in Xinjiang has cropped up, and it's a 40% increase from previous estimates. This is a very disturbing development. Aisha, I know you are waiting patiently on your phone. Thank you for waiting. Tell us about your story. What's happened to you, and what's happened to your family, and what's happening to your people in Uyghur region?
Okay, what happened to me was a shock. It's back to 2017. It was a Mother's Day, near to Mother's Day, which people celebrate in the UK. So I sent £150, a small amount of money, to my mother. And then before then that, nothing. It was not unusual, and then nothing happens. So whatever you do between, at least you can do phone communication and or email or the WeChat, which we use normally between China and overseas. So I sent the money to my mother. Before I sending money, they said, do not send. It's okay. But I feel like I can't do anything else, but at least I can just express a small gratitude to my mom. So after sending money, and I given the reference number to my brother. So, and then my brother went to the bank and then want to take the money, but then from the bank side, hold him, and then he was interrogated by the security. And then it up to like 3 days, we didn't hear where he was.
Wow.
And detained, or it's just disappeared. And then I called my mom. I didn't know. I have no idea what happened. And then I just called my mom. Just want to confirm is he took the money. And then they said, don't ask any question. I was like really surprised why I cannot ask about my brother. And then I really feel very guilty that at that time, like what happened because of me, a small gesture, and then I made my brother disappear. And since then, 2017, it was 2017 March, it's just 4 years back. And then by the end of July, my landline was disconnected, like cut off. And this is very,
Where were you?
Sorry?
From where were you communicating? From the UK?
Yes.
Okay, right. So how did you get your landline disconnected in the UK?
No. My landline back home, my parents' home landline.
Okay, their landline got cut off. So the Chinese authorities decided to disconnect them from their phone, I understand.
Yes.
And did your brother ever get released?
And then after 3 days, my sister from another city, she told me like he was released, and then they asked all the information like why she's sending the money, and he told it was a simple, just she sent money to my mom, and he was going to take it. So, but then I don't understand, just for the simple thing, they had to interrogate a young man for 3 days. I don't know what else they did, but in the end, like I heard my sister, she said like he was released. But by July, but since then, actually since that phone call, and my mom asked me, do not call brother, do not communicate with your brother, because in Uyghurs' case, like young men, especially young men, is mostly under risk. So if they have anything related with communicate with overseas, or if they have anything on their phone, even they found a picture which says Bismillah or Allah, or like praising about the religion, anything like that, they do scan and they will be into trouble. But I have never ever thought about this.
Your family is okay now. At the moment, they're okay.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to you after the break. Richard, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to start with you and get your reaction to what you've heard. And don't forget, it was Donald Trump's administration. The last of his gesture was to call China or give I believe this genocide is going on, said Mike Pompeo, and that we are witnessing the systematic attempt to destroy Uyghur by Chinese party state. Was one of those last things that he did. I want to hear from you, and I want to hear whether you think British government is doing enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Uyghur people are forgotten people, and we should not forget them. We will keep on talking about them until they're free. I know some of you will be complaining, why is the presenter not balancing the conversation? Well, I will be balancing the conversation if there was anything to balance. Let's talk about this when we get back after this break. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. We're talking about our brothers and sisters, our friends from Uyghur region, the Muslims, the forgotten Muslims of China. They're not small in number, millions, and at least 1 million or more, maybe even more than 1 million, maybe 2 million, have been incarcerated in concentration camps, courtesy of our Chinese communist government. Unfortunately, it seems like this communist government doesn't understand anything but, and I'm not going to even repeat what they understand. It looks like they don't, because for them, it's okay. You can abuse people, you can incarcerate them, you can arbitrarily detain them, you can torture them, you can allow rape, you can do anything you want, because communism is more important than human rights or the values of humans. There are people who don't necessarily subscribe to communism, and Muslims who don't agree with communism. What's wrong with that? Why would you want to incarcerate Muslims just because they want to be Muslims? Let's not dwell on it for too long, but we will come back to this particular point later. I've not spoken to Richard Flowers. He has been, actually he's the first one to join our program, at the beginning of our program, before any of our other guests had come. Richard, I'm really sorry. I had, it's my mistake that I left you until the last.
Not at all. We had important testimony to hear from you.
Thank you for being so kind. So let me take your reaction. What's your point of view, and what do you say to what you have heard so far?
I think the title of your program really goes to the heart of the issue here. We must not forget the Uyghur people, and it is so important that we hear these stories again and again. You yourself have referred to the huge amount of evidence that's been gathered by groups like Amnesty International or Human Rights International, the journalists of the New York Times, uncovering the terrible treatment of people in these so-called re-education centers in the northwest province of China. It's really important that we keep using our power to remind the Chinese government that we remember these people. Michael has talked about how it is shameful that some governments and some countries are keeping silent about this. The one power that we really have is to keep saying to China, we see what you are doing, and we remember. Here in Tower Hamlets, we know that the Chinese embassy is moving to a new site at the Old Mint, and Councillor Rabina Khan for the Liberal Democrats, with support from David Gold of the Conservatives, has brought several times a motion to Council to raise this issue specifically. We want to welcome the embassy here because it's so important that we keep talking. We have to keep a dialogue going, but we also want to remind the Chinese that we remember. We want to call on the Council to address the Chinese embassy to say they should be implementing the United Nations requirements to allow observers to go in and see what is really happening there. and to stop the genocidal treatment of the Uyghur peoples. On a national level, the British government has talked about welcoming people from Hong Kong, and it's important to remember that China is oppressing people in many different places: Hong Kong, Taiwan, Tibet, and of course Xinjiang. But we welcome the offer from the British government to bring Hong Kong people here. I remind people that Paddy Ashdown suggested that Hong Kongers should have British passports as much as 20 years ago.
But what is your party doing? I know you're the only political party representative we have in our discussion, but what is Lib Dems doing in terms of, it can't be just enough, it's not enough to make a statement. You've got parliamentarians who are from the Lib Dems, we've got many other powerful people within the House of Lords who are also Lib Dem. We've got some of the greatest champions of human rights within the Lib Dems. I don't hear sufficient noise being made by the party itself.
It's difficult in times of COVID to necessarily get this particular issue, and you're absolutely right to be raising this. But Layla Moran has made several speeches in Parliament and to our conference talking about the specific issue of the Uyghur genocide, and calling again on the government to address this with China.
Who is the Lib Dem party leader right now?
Ed Davey is the party leader. Layla Moran is our foreign affairs spokesman.
Until Ed Davey makes it a preoccupation of his own, I wouldn't believe this to be anything serious on the Lib Dems agenda, on the Lib Dems priority list. I used to be a member of the Lib Dems. I know how it works. If the party leader does not think it's important and he doesn't speak about it, then it's not important.
When asked about foreign affairs, Ed Davey will definitely agree with Layla Moran, and I can assure you that we do regularly raise these issues with the party leader. Obviously, a lot of his focus at the moment is on the United Kingdom itself because of COVID, and what coverage we get tends to be asking questions about the COVID and the issues in the UK.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. I understand that.
But yes, as a foreign affairs, and he has obviously got cabinet level experience, and is very keen on making these talking worldwide. His background, of course, was in climate change and getting global agreement there with the Paris Accords. But similarly, his interest in the global human rights, which, as you already point out, is a huge part of what the Liberal Democrats stand for, means that, yes, he's very willing to stand up and say these things.
Well, until I hear it from his mouth, I'm not going to take your word for it. But let's move on with the conversation. I've got a caller waiting, and I want to ask one question before I take the call. Michael Pollack, there is a point Chinese government is making, and that is that China is fighting terrorism. There were separatists who had made an attack against Chinese security within Uyghur region, and that extremist, as far as China is concerned, activities made China very jittery, and it took very drastic actions. It did not want to see what other countries, under the pretext of freedom, had offered more terrorist attacks perhaps, and they didn't want that. So it said, we'll crack down on them, we'll brainwash people, and we'll make sure that there is no extremism within our country. Do you think China has a case?
In regards to the arguments they sometimes make about terrorism, I think that what they're using this is a very convenient excuse. And if one looks across China, what's actually happening, because there's many different ethnicities in China with their own languages, their own ethnicities, what is actually happening is that the Chinese state is trying to make everyone the same. So in regards to the Mongolian people who live within China, they've been banned from teaching their own languages. We all know what's happening with the Tibetan people, the people in Hong Kong. So what's actually happening in the Uyghur region is more aimed at making everyone think the same and to get rid of differences in different cultures, different religions. So that's really what they're doing, but using terrorism sometimes as an excuse. When you lock up over 1 million people, you can't be saying that they're all terrorists. It just doesn't make sense. It's not plausible that 1 million or more than 1 million terrorists are in that region. It really is beyond belief.
Well, they've not just done that, have they? They've raised mosques. Many mosques have been completely obliterated. Chinese Han's communities have been forced on the Uyghur people. Uyghur families are forced to host Han's male in their houses. The Uyghur women are forced into sexual relationship with Han's men. In prison, Chinese security services are accused of gang rape. We know torture, disappearance. We know surveillance, face recognition camera. We know many other inhuman acts perpetrated by the Chinese government. And I can't understand for the life of me that you can't do much with our law. Doesn't the international law provide a scope to do something about this?
It's a very good point you make. All the things you mentioned, the raising of mosques, forcing Uyghurs to eat pork, to cut their beards, mass torture, mass sexual offences, they really don't point towards this having anything to do with terrorism. It does really point to what I was saying before about the Chinese trying to make all the people within China and the different peoples within China behave in the same way.
I think you're being very generous. I think we would call China a Chinese state-sponsored terrorism against Uyghur people. That's what they're doing. They've been accused by United States of America of genocide. For example, it says in a quote, intend to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. Genocide. We call it concentration camp. We call the Chinese government terrorists here. Why are you being so generous with them?
In regards to the terminology I use, it's quite clear that they're involved in crimes against humanity, and it's probable that it does amount to genocide as well. And in regards to international institutions, you asked a question about why can't the international law do something. The problem is, in the Security Council, China has a veto. So if anyone was to propose the setting up of a tribunal to take into account of what's going on, of course, China will veto that decision because it's in their interest.
Well, we have a precedence recently when ICC, International Crimes Tribunal, I think, or Criminal Court, has taken up the case of Palestine against the accusation of Israeli state perpetrating war crimes against the Palestinian people. And ICC took up a unilateral decision that they thought there is a credible evidence to investigate that.
In regards to the ICC, it exercises its power, its jurisdiction on two main bases. The first is territorial of countries who consent. So that's what's happened in the Palestine case. The Palestinian Authority has said that they will consent to jurisdiction in the Palestinian territories. So that means the ICC prosecutor can investigate what's happening there in regards to crimes by the Israeli state against Palestinian people, and on the other hand, also crimes committed against the Palestinian people by some of the Palestinian groups as well. So that's because Palestine consented to it. China, of course, has never joined the International Criminal Court. The other way the International Criminal Court can have jurisdiction is if the Security Council orders it to do so.
And you can't, because they can veto that. So we are really stuck. And this is one of the, I'm afraid, the nastiest feature of our United Nations Security Council and the veto power. If it was me, I would abolish it all and enable all states to have equal power. This is not acceptable, unfair. In 21st century world, in a democracy or in democratic endeavors that we're all so busy, such absolute power is not acceptable. But let's move on to our Uyghur guests. Going to Nur Sin Amgol, about your experience. I know you've introduced your family and you've given us your side of the story. Can I ask you about the speech that you gave in the parliament in Turkey? Is it correct that you were invited by the opposition and the governing party, the ARC party as we know them, apparently they're the ones who prevented the broadcast? Is that correct?
Yes, after the speech, I learned that my speech was cut off from the national TV, and there is several excuse that the stage was belonged to the party leader, so that's why they cut off my speech. But I am representing my family members and also representing millions of Uyghurs who are asking for help from the Turkish government. I was really hoped that all the people in Turkey can hear the Uyghurs, because it's been more than 4 years, and we even don't know where our parents, where our brothers, and we even don't know if they alive or not. And this is really hard for us to spend every moment while we are hearing the very sad news, like the torture, the rape, and the forced labor, and all of them are killing us every moment. So that was the very special chance for me to let the Turkish citizens to know and ask the government to take a serious action. But unfortunately, my voice was cut off. But after that, I still had a more chance to let the people know what's really
Well,
happening.
that in itself
to
would
the
become a
Uyghurs.
story, that the fact that your speech got cut off, you probably had more
Yes.
publicity because of that. Okay,
Yes.
Noor, just stay there. Let me get to a caller. Hello, salam alaikum, caller.
Islam.
Go ahead. What would you like to say?
My name is Asad. I'm calling from London. I'm a Bengali, and I have been discussing the issue of the Uyghur and the Muslim community for a very long time. After my contribution, I want to give you a practical suggestion. In fact, practical suggestion for people in Britain and Muslims around the world.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you could ask me, just remind me what my practical suggestion is.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, it's not just the Uyghurs. In fact, there's a fascinating article in the New York Times on the 15th, I believe 2 days ago, about the community in Hainan Island, where a community called the Utsuls, they are being destroyed. Basically, this is a very ancient Champa community, over 1,000-year-old community in Hainan Island, in a city called Sanya. They have now all their mosques, as old as 1,000 years old, are being decimated, and so on and so forth. And also, one other point, people say there are 25 million Muslims in China. Actually, estimates are as high as 100 million Muslims in China. And one of the problems with the Muslim communities in China is that most of them are not talking to each other. In fact, they don't talk to each other. Even though Chinese Muslim communities are found all over China, believe it or not. In fact, Chinese Muslim cooking restaurants are incredibly famous all over China, although they are being curtailed now. One other point, how the Muslim nations are treating the Uyghur community. Egypt bundled hundreds of Uyghurs back to China not so long ago.
What do you expect from Egypt? Come on, Egypt is a despotic country
You're
run by
absolutely right.
despots. They're run by absolute
Well, I
nutters.
can talk about
So
my
don't
own
worry about them.
country. My own country, Bangladesh, has not done very much. And the country of
Well, why are you surprised that your country, Bangladesh, has done nothing? The Bangladeshi government has a very different agenda. As far as they're concerned, Uyghur is not of their business. It's not even their neighbor. Why would they even talk about it? They've got Burmese junta on their backyard causing troubles for the Rohingya Muslims. They've got enough in their hands.
face a similar type of persecution to the Uyghur Muslim population. In fact, they're unfortunately being helped by China, the Burmese community nation. One of the points is this: Pakistan, for example, which was ex-West Pakistan, there were over 10,000 and more Uyghur community. Either they have been returned back to China or been decimated somehow, because they have been completely forgotten. I hope Amnesty International...
Well, Imran Khan did say something in his interview. He said he doesn't even know what's happening with the Uyghur community in China, which I found astonishing.
Who arrived during the Afghanistan conflict, they have completely disappeared. And I think this has not been highlighted, actually.
What's your practical suggestion, if you don't mind me rushing you a bit?
Brother, by the way, I want to say one thing. You are doing an excellent job. I'm very proud of you as a Bengali and as a Muslim.
Thank
and
you.
As a
Thank you.
There are over 100 million overseas Chinese. Many of them have connection with the nation state of China, right? Many of them live in liberal nations. By the way, this overseas Chinese community only arose to give you a little history, you know, Bangladesh was occupied by Brits. Bangladesh is the reason why there was an empire in India, and the reason why Britain went on to invade China. In fact, Chinese migration abroad happened because when Bangladesh had been taken over, by the way, Bangladesh was the second largest economy in the world in the 1700s. That's why the empire was built. The English Empire was founded in Greater Bangladesh.
Okay. Well, I want you to go to your practical steps to do with the Uyghur.
Step is this.
Yes.
Over 100 million Chinese, overseas Chinese, are found all over the world. We need to work on the hearts and minds of these people to try and encourage them, because I have been doing it for over a decade. Hearts and minds, to try and say, listen, we can, as people outside of China, outside of Asia, we can help the Chinese government to try and establish some sort of modicum of humanity for their own citizens. Do not destroy this community. This is a very ancient community.
But why China won't listen to that? Because Chinese government is very used to doing this. Anyone, we've seen it in Tibet, we've seen it in Hong Kong, we've seen it in other regions wherever China has flexed its muscles. Anyone who dissents gets absolutely obliterated. We've seen this in Tiananmen Square when people who came out to protest were decimated. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, but maybe a good one. I want to say thank you to your fantastic point, a very well-informed point, actually. Let me go to Aisha, who has been waiting for a long time. Aisha, your community has suffered at the hands of China. What is the crime your community has committed? What's the issue? Is it simply because you're Muslim, or is it that your community is actually busy planning and plotting terrorist activities against China?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. Actually, as Nurse Mangul there and me too, we brought up there, and we are a very friendly people. And in China, actually, before 9/11, so-called 9/11 attack in America happened, all the Chinese major Han Chinese groups or other groups live outside of the Xinjiang. They invite people to do a tour in Xinjiang, because Uyghur people and all other minority group people, they are very friendly, they are very kind, and this region is very beautiful because we have very clear 4 seasons, so there are place to visit, and also some very culturally very different aspects to see, and plus food, culture, and to them, the majority Han Chinese, this is a place for visit. So they always like talk the positive things about Uyghurs, kind of like making a picture of Uyghurs. Oh, they are very lovely people, happy people. They can dance and they host you very nicely. So the all propaganda about the Uyghur people are like, it was like that. But just after the 9/11, they found an excuse. Find a very good excuse, actually, because Uyghurs are culturally, linguistically, and also historically very different from Chinese. So their story, their description about Uyghurs completely changed. They are Muslims, they're extremists. They always have this idea of separation from mainland China. Actually, majority of Uyghurs, they sent their children to Chinese schools as well. We would like to, we welcome the Chinese. Even I remember as a child, when I was studying in one of the Chinese cities, and when I back home, my mother helping some Chinese migrant workers.
Just stay with that thought. I'm going to go into a break now, but when I come back, I do want to explore this. Are the Chinese communities right about their fear of the Uyghur Muslims? Should they be suspecting them? Should they be making this allegation that the Uyghur community of Muslims are actually planning terrorist activities en masse? Is that plausible? Is that sensible? Is that even possible? Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with our conversation. Don't go too far away. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for staying with us, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the Uyghur community of Muslims who live in the northwestern province, and they are not just subject to arbitrary arrest on a occasional basis. No, it's a systematic genocide of a people, forceful change of a people's culture, their identity, their religion, their heritage, their history, so that they can assimilate into becoming the one nation China theory, where you're all communist, you're all secular in your everything, you have no religious or have no right to any other identities except being Chinese. But at the center of it is the Han's Chinese ethnocentric, very racist policies that's been led by this current government under the current president, Zipin, I think that's how you pronounce his name. We have a serious concern. But one of the points earlier on raised that really bothers me, why is it that we have organization of Muslim countries, Islamic countries, if we want to call it, I hate to call them Islamic countries because none of them are Islamic. If anything, they are just Muslim majority in name. Most of them are dictatorship, despotic, illegitimate in their governance, and they're not elected or accountable to people. So I don't know if I should have any hope on them. But it does worry me and bother me that none of them have said, or most of them have stayed silent about what's happening to Uyghur people. And I'm going to go to Richard, as we were talking earlier on. Richard, it is an astonishing indictment of the Muslim community's, global Muslim countries' failure to stand for the rights of people who have been abused left, right and center, especially by China, because money talks more. They just want to do their business. Is that correct?
I think it's very important to distinguish between the governments, which, as you say, can be despotic in many countries, and the people. Muslim people are among the most generous and concerned in the world, and we know this from our local community, how very much they want people to remember what is going on in the Uyghur provinces in China. You spoke earlier about how you wanted to hear Ed Davey talking about the Uyghur issue. In the last week, he's called for a boycott of the Winter Olympics, and that is again something where we can reach out across the world to peoples in all countries, all faiths,
but
and
would that
say,
really
look,
work?
we can't
Richard, would that
let
really
this
work?
stand at
Would
the
that,
moment.
would that really work, calling for a boycott to China for the Winter Olympics?
It's
surely.
exactly the sort of external pressure that the Chinese government will listen to.
Okay.
They are, as you say, very, very much against listening to their own people internally. But outside, in the liberal West, we have the freedoms that we value so much, and they recognize and want to be respected. So when we talk and when we remember, they notice. These things take time. They take immense amounts of time. As you know, it's very difficult to break down that sort of government, but things do change, and they change because people like yourself keep raising the issues, like Nur and Aisha keep giving their testimony. And so long as people are willing to keep being heard, it's very important that those stories are told, and then the Chinese government eventually will have to listen. There will be change, not necessarily in the short term. It's very hard, but over time, keep the pressure going, keep talking. This is how Amnesty International works for many years, just writing letters, just writing letters. It's not about threats or violence, it's just about saying we believe in truth, we believe in freedom, in diversity. We think we are better for having diverse cultures. We think we are better for having a world that is full of
But China is not interested.
Not all the same.
But China is not interested in listening to your...
The Chinese government may not be interested right now, but the Chinese government will change. Nobody lasts forever. President Xi won't last forever, whatever he thinks. And there will be different people who come after.
But there will be another...
As long as we keep talking, as long as we keep expressing our liberal optimism, then the people who come later will have to be thinking about that. They can't ignore us if we keep talking about it forever, and we can do that.
But you know what, Richard? The reason why I am expressing the frustration of our viewers, especially those who are watching our program, and I'm pretty certain many others. I have seen these liberal aspirations for the last 40 years of my life, out of which 25 years have been devoted in social and political activism. constant aspiration, but no change, no real change. It was at our watch.
We have seen change.
Hold on.
though.
It
We've
was
seen
it was
changes.
it was
We've
at
seen
our
change.
watch. It was at our watch that we saw genocide perpetrated against the Muslims in Bosnia. It was at our watch that we saw this happening in not just in Bosnia but other parts of the world. But right now, as we watch, right now as we watch, in Syria, in Burma, in many other parts of the world, it seems like the Muslims are the ones who are open season for anybody, and the rest of us in our liberal wishy-washy lofty towers can keep on wishing, but nothing really changes. That's the frustration we have, and that's the reason why I'm saying that yes, we can wish for all that and we can call for boycott. Unless there is really interest, nothing is going to happen. When Tony Blair decided to bomb the life out of Milosevic and his army, that's when Milosevic stopped attacking the Muslims in Europe. Now, we don't see similar spined principled action against nations who are doing abysmal human rights, a constant violation of people. We're not seeing any of that.
The important thing, as I say, is that we have to talk. War, in the end, just kills people. I'm sorry. And you say intervene and bomb people, but the people who end up getting bombed are the Muslims on the ground. And that's not what we want. We need to try and persuade change to come. And we have seen that happen. We've seen it happen in Russia when Gorbachev changed the way Russia
Well, you've got
thought.
Putin now.
I know it's changed again.
You've got Putin
but
now,
you
who's
can see
even
how
worse
it's
than
changed.
anything else before.
You've seen change in the Eastern European countries. You've seen change in Bosnia. You've seen change in countries from Spain and Greece, where they were ruled by dictatorships, and how over time the pressure of the European Union, flag behind me, and the Western powers and liberal thinking, wishy-washy as it is, got people to change.
Yes, after the death and destruction of millions.
It takes time and talking and faith and hope, and it takes trust. But if we keep talking and remembering, not forgetting any of these terrible things that these people are doing, not forgiving, but not giving in, just saying this is our position. These are the things that we stand for. These are the important liberal principles that we stand for. Over time, that wins people over.
Okay,
Not
thank you for that.
necessarily the government of now, but the people who will be the government in the future. They will be thinking these thoughts. They cannot not hear us.
Thank you, Richard.
And
it's very
when we
clear.
do things like call for a boycott of the Olympics, then that is a big sign that they will have to listen. Because they see these things. See, again, South Africa. South Africa changed through sport. Far more than anyone invading or bombing anything, it changed because sport happened. And with the boycott of South African sport, changed the minds of a nation. We can do this in our liberal wishy-washy way. We really can.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to have to go to a caller who's been waiting very patiently for a long time. Let's go to the caller. Hello, assalamu alaikum, caller.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. What would you like to say?
Brother, I would like to say basically, like, if you look at the facts, the Uyghur people, what does Uyghur weavers, they're silk weavers, like, if you look at the silk trail from China all the way to Asia, it's rich, it's full of money. And you know what, that's not just the main part, there's cotton, there's other side industries as well. Like if you go into opium as well, like that's a big part that Britain handed over Hong Kong at 1996 or 97. Because you know what, that was the biggest mistake. Because that's when we left our stake in China and our say in China and our strong points, which has been running for over centuries, from the times of Empire and Raj.
Okay, but, so what would you like Britain to do? Would you like Britain to go back and invade?
Like from World War II, it was the Jews, they say 9 million, but did just 9 million people die? No, it was more than that. It's probably near enough 60 to 100 million. But you know what, since then it's the same thing that's been ongoing. And right now it's Muslims in flavor, and you know what, you're the new flavor that's dying. And you know what, till we all stand up and speak up, nothing's going to happen. Look at what Trump's done.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Let's go back to Aisha. Aisha, you were speaking before we went into a break, and I'm sorry I didn't complete that particular part of the conversation. I want to ask you the same question. Do you think wishing it will go away, talking about it, Winter Olympics and stuff like that, are going to make any difference to your lives and the lives of your people in Uyghur region?
Look, actually, yes, your frustration is actually our frustration is far greater than all of you on this issue. Like the whole world watching, listening, and we also sleep with news and wake up with news. Like a few years back, we can't see Uyghur when we search on Google. Now it's everywhere, but nothing is happening. But on the other hand, like it's not only wish. There are several countries. They at least they passed the law, passed the Human Rights Act, and passed the Magnitsky Act. Now, at least in Britain, Uyghur, this issue taken seriously into parliamentary level discussion. So it's not about like I am in greater hope it will change immediately in a few months or immediately then, but at least I have the hope. These people speaking, these people thinking about how to solve this problem, so that their discussion, even it's not completely ended in the way we wished, but it still makes me feel hopeful.
Okay,
like our tears, our sorrows being listened. So it's after America, England, and then Australia, Canada, and then going to Belgium Parliament. Now, like one by one, at least they taking step, even slow, but it still like makes me feel hopeful. At least they are speaking up, making it real, making it let their people listen. Even my friends now, instead of me sending them, sharing them the news, they sending back to me. Like, look, BBC do this, Guardian and this and that. So I feel like at least people are listening to us. But the problem, again, it is really, really long time. As a learned person, I feel like when I see the number, it's not about a million. Million is not a number for me. It is 2018 when UN announced that over 1 million Uyghurs. But the camp is not, they're not going to even close it. Instead, they're not only using only jailing or sentencing the people, but they shamelessly using the people's, their body, their human hair, which we witnessed what happened in the American border. They found out, and then the orphanage, they holding the Uyghur children, our future, and there's nearly 1,000 Uyghur academics and the businessmen or elites of the society, the backbone of the Uyghur society. They are disappeared, disappeared in thin air, which really, really like make me cry, because these are the people. If we in the free countries, you can feel like a professor, how long it takes, a doctor, or a well-known business person, like how they make up in that step, a lawyer, or any governmental officials, like when you after studying and working hard to that step. But China don't have that trust in anyone.
Okay, all right. Aisha, thank you. Very, very beautifully put. I'm grateful that you expressed your hope and your positive mindset that things are changing, even if it's slow, it's going to change. Let's go to Noor. Noor, do you agree that the slow change that we are talking about, the conversations in the parliament, small acts and small articles that are being published, a feature on BBC recently, are these really going to make any difference to the lives of the millions who are suffering at the hands of the Chinese Communist government?
Yeah, it's a hard question, but I just know I can't lose hope, because if I lose hope, this means that I give the death sentence to my parents and to my brothers. So I can't lose hope. This is the point. And am I hopeful? I just want to be, I just don't want to lose hope. This is my case. And I am really disappointing what's happening in the world, because all the politicians, and they just talk and the actions is very slow. But it's almost 4 years and we are talking about all kind of torture the people are facing every day, and I don't know how long they can stand it, because it's really hard for me to keep talking about the same story and my heart can't stand it anymore. So for me, as a victims of the 21st century genocide, I really hope I can see my parents next month. I can't wait any longer. But in reality, and we have to be patient, we have to do something every day, step by step. And I am sure in one day, the China will be taken into the international court and will be punished what they do. Maybe, I really don't want to say this, maybe I will lose my parents and my brothers, but I will do whatever it takes to punish the Chinese government to their crime, what they do to my people. This can't be forgotten. What they are doing to Uyghurs cannot be forgotten, and we should let the people know, and we should let the international court to take the China to the international court and punish them. This is my hope.
Thank you very much, Noor. And my tears are with you. Heartfelt sorrow and sympathy for your people, for your parents and your brothers who have been incarcerated like millions of others. Michael, you're a barrister. Why can we not issue an arrest warrant against President Xi and arrest him as soon as he lands in any of our countries, anywhere in the world, especially the civilized world where we call law and order as our priority? Why can't we not issue an arrest warrant against him?
That's a very good question, and there are legal things that countries can do rather than just talking. And I think it's very important that people realize what's going on, but we cannot be treating a genocidal state as business as usual. The Chinese state needs to know that everywhere they go, people will be looking at them as a country committing genocide. So I agree with what Richard says about should we be honoring them by taking our Olympic teams to their Olympics, and I don't think we should. Should all the Western sponsors of those Olympics, companies like Bridgestone Tires and Airbnb, should they get away with making money out of sponsoring these kind of events? And I don't think they should as well. Should we be doing trade with genocidal countries? Because that's what really we're saying about China at this time. And I don't think we should as well. And some of your viewers will know that there's an amendment to the trade bill which has been going through Parliament. The trade bill, after we've left the European Union, is there so the UK government can enter into trade deals all around the world. An amendment which has been put forward from the House of Lords is a cross-party amendment led by Lord Alton. And that amendment would give our courts the ability to decide about whether genocide is happening, which would send it back to both houses of Parliament to decide whether we should be entering into a trade deal with a country which is committing genocide. And it's not just aimed at China, it could apply to other countries as well. So it's
a very simple extension of what you're saying. Issue an arrest warrant against this genocidal maniac who thinks he is President Mao, Chairman Mao type, absolutely brutal dictator, and that's how he's behaving. Issue an immediate arrest warrant, and every country should do that if they call themselves civilized. Secondly, why would we want to do business with anyone who perpetrates genocide? All countries in the West, especially in Europe and America, Canada and other parts of the world, could immediately bring China to its knees if they stop trading with China. But we won't trade, we will not do that because we are too coward. We do not follow human rights consistently. We are constantly violating human rights by giving hood and a wink to the butchers and dictators of the world, left, right and center. We even supply them arms when they're brutalizing their own people. I have no hope whatsoever, Michael, in our governments doing anything about it.
Well, you say that, but there is a concerted effort, and it seems to be made between Western states to actually call China to account. And many people have been focusing on the World Health Organization's trip where they went to museums and weren't given the proper access to data that they should have when they're in China. And let's not forget about the millions of deaths which have come out of that tragedy as well. That only took place because Australia stood up and demanded it. And what happened after that was China whacked huge tariffs on the Australian trade. So they stopped importing Australian wine and also other products. So there are some very brave countries standing up to their own detriment, and countries like Australia, the United States under the previous administration, and we hope under the current administration as well. Those countries need to start working together to stand up to China.
Thank you. But Michael, I'm afraid we've run out of time. I want to give my deep thanks and gratitude to yourselves, Michael Pollack, Noor, Sinam Gol, Abdul Rashid, Aisha, and Richard Flowers for all of your amazing contribution, and to my callers who have called as well to express your views. Ladies and gentlemen, human rights is universal. It doesn't matter where you live. You have every right to be treated like a human with dignity and honor. Your life, your property, your intellect, your family, your faith, your every being that you have, every fiber of your being must be respected and protected. Anyone violates it should be held to account. We should not be giving priorities to business or oil or friendship. We should be valuing humans and human rights, and that's where we should be focusing. Anyway, our program for our Uyghur people is not going to be the last one. We'll do again and again. I will raise as many concerns, and I'll cause as much trouble as I can possibly cause on live programs, telling people that Chinese government should be brought to account, including an arrest warrant against the president of China should be issued immediately. Anyway, those are the conversations, and conversations will continue. Thank you for participating, for watching, and taking your time out to show concerns for the Uyghur people. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.